This program is guided by AICTE, and the subject of the program is the implementation of sexual harassment of women at Workplace Act 2013. Welcome all, and we invite Ms. Tanvi Sharma and short introduction of Tanvi Sharma ma'am. Ms. Tanvi Sharma is an assistant professor at JIMS Greater Noida, and welcome ma'am. She has been teaching law and legal studies since past 7 years in institutes like Alliance School of Law, Bangalore, and apart from teaching, she had been litigating also in various court of Delhi NCR. Welcome, Tanu ma'am. We are waiting your session.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much. Sir, PPT share कर सकते हैं ना?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Right.
Yes, sir. Right, family. I hope everybody can see the PPT. Okay, thank you so much, sir, for inviting me. And thank you so much for the institute also to celebrate and mark 25th November as a date of elimination of violence against women. आज तक हमने स्कूल टाइम उससे पहले कभी इस पर्टिकुलर डे के बारे में हमें नहीं पता था क्योंकि इतना अवेयरनेस है ही नहीं. But internationally, 25th November has been marked as very important day to recognize that at least हम एक ऐसा दिन सेलिब्रेट करें या एक ऐसा दिन मार्क करें जिससे लोगों को पता चले कि yes, violence against women is a huge issue और सिर्फ women. That means this day is majorly working with regard to eliminate any kind of violence which is happening to women at large. And violence is any kind of violence. It can be emotional violence or asexual violence, sexual violence, or any economic abuse. Any abuse which is against women is celebrated. Now, if we talk about violence is one kind of infringement of human rights, and human rights has been derived from two words: human and rights. मतलब every human being in this world will have human rights. If you talk about prisoners also who are sitting behind the bars, उन लोगों की भी human rights होती है. Why not women? So eventually women की human rights इतनी recognize नहीं होती, इतनी empower नहीं होती, इसीलिए a special day has been marked named as elimination of women violence against women. Now, if I talk about any kind of violence which is a human rights violation which is prevalent throughout the whole world, and violence, if I talk about not only physical violence, emotional violence, mental violence, psychological violence, any kind of violence which actually breaks the normal monotony or which breaks the normal working of any women for that matter. If you talk about not only this kind of violence, it affects people, women at large, not only their sense of security, their confidence, their method of speaking, or their method of moving forward. हर चीज में ये violence impact होती है. अगर prisoners की violence, prisoners की human rights हम recognize कर रहे हैं, तो women की human rights हम क्यों recognize ना करें? So if you talk about United Nations data, 1 out of every 3 women are suffering from any kind of violence. It can be physical, emotional, any asexual, sexual violence. And very strange thing is, हमारे इंडिया में एक law है जिसका नाम है सेक्सुअल हरासमेंट एट वर्क प्लेस. सेक्सुअल हरासमेंट एट वर्क प्लेस ओनली टॉक्स अबाउट सेक्सुअल हरासमेंट, बट ये जरूरी नहीं है कि वर्क प्लेस में सिर्फ सेक्सुअल हरासमेंट हो. मेंटल हरासमेंट भी हो सकता है, एनी काइंड ऑफ सेक्सुअल हरासमेंट भी हो सकता है. और इंडिया में ऐसा भी कोई लॉ स्पेसिफिकली आया नहीं है जो सिर्फ सेक्सुअल हरासमेंट के बारे में बात करता है. आई वुड सजेस्ट द गवर्नमेंट टू कम अप विद मेजर्स टू कम अप विद एनी काइंड ऑफ हरासमेंट for that matter. Now, violence is not only with respect to, I mean, if I talk about gender violence, ऐसा जरूरी नहीं है सिर्फ women के लिए violence होता है. Of course, there are a lot of men who are also who against who the violence has been occurred. But this day, 25th November, has been marked as International Elimination of Women's, I mean, violence against women. Gender violence is prevalent not only one specific nation but the universe altogether. Now, in today's session, I would discuss what all crimes which are reported against women. Now, if I talk about crime against women, despite of revolutionary phase undergone by society, deep somewhere lies the same trodden attitude of people who makes us look down upon, because of which enacts and lead towards a women. And we are seriously, and we eventually are talking about, I mean, it's not only women, I mean, everybody, even if an educated class or uneducated class, the concept of violence remains persuasive. It's not that only violence is with respect to uneducated class of society. ये violence is prevalent हर जगह, इंडिया में, abroad में. There have been instances, United Nations ने सर्वे किया है, डेटा निकाला है कि सिर्फ ऐसा नहीं कि ये violence एक particular country पे restricted है. In fact, any kind of violence is women violence is pervasive in nature. And what kind of violence are we talking about? The violence can be of rape, molestation, eve teasing, dowry. Violence, like apart from dowry, I mean, dowry में हमेशा जरूरी नहीं है कि physical violence होता है, mental violence भी होता है. And law में एक term है also known as cruelty, which is physical and mental cruelty both. Physical cruelty, it is very easy to prove in the court, but mental cruelty आप कैसे prove करेंगे? उसका कोई ठोस सबूत नहीं होता. But still, it is the art of the advocate to prove the fact that mental violence या mental cruelty हुआ है. And it is an adequate ground to grant divorce also. And then you have trafficking, sexual harassment, adultery, then sexual discrimination, and many more. If I talk about major trafficking, the trafficking is majorly broadly defined as the recruitment, transportation, purchase, sale, transfer, harboring, or receipt of person by threat and use of violence, induction, force, fraud, deception, and or coercion. Trafficking, as the word suggests, you've already heard a lot of times. There are a lot of human trafficking done, wherein the women, I mean, women are being traded. The organs have been sold to different people in specific price. Child trafficking is also very prevalent, which should not be, but yes, it is a bad mark in our society, which should be abolished. And United Nations Declaration on Violence Against Women is trying is making small steps to decrease the aspect of violence against women and trafficking. Eventually, there have been a lot of cases of child trafficking, women trafficking, and these are the kind of crimes which are very heinous in nature. ये crimes नहीं होने चाहिए, और every individual should recognize that women and child are vulnerable groups, are still regarded as vulnerable groups. Then why are they? I mean, you should work in regard to protect them, not to I mean, to deploy them, to not to cause more harm to them. A lot of criminal activities been done in the name of trafficking. Flesh trade is done, especially with regard to child, minor, and there are a lot of victims. 60% of victims have been reported in India who are from backward classes like scheduled class and scheduled tribes. And majorly these are issues, I mean, these are issues which are being recognized by the government, but still, even if we have laws, but still its implementation is somewhat lacking. The issues of trafficking and commercial sexual exploitation of women and children have taken the center stage in the present time because of the following reason. I don't think okay. So the reasons are increasing. I would request. Okay, thank you. Increasing interstate and international trafficking of women, increasing reports of commercial sexual exploitation of children. We should also come up with greater awareness and emphasize of rights to children also. So women and children go hand in hand. Then you also have you already have the economic and law order of trafficking and commercial sexual exploitation is not only part of one particular nation. It is a universal and it's a global network. Not only India or one nation is fighting against these heinous crimes, the whole world is fighting against heinous crimes, and the whole world should come together to decrease the cases of these violence. Now, if you talk about countries world over which are affected in three ways. First of all, home country, where women are lured to leave and join sex industry abroad. Then you have transit countries, like for example, women from India have been traded in China. So in India becomes home country. Transit country is through which the women are transported. For example, they're transported through Bangladesh. So Bangladesh becomes a transit country, and the destination is China. So China becomes the destination country where the crime actually occurs. See, if you can see the poster, not only people in India, people in Canada are also suffering from human trafficking. They can Trafficking can happen in two different ways. It is like forceful, or second, forceful, like you do not ask for the consent from that particular woman, and or without the consent, or with the consent of the women. I mean, with the consent of the women clearly means वो लेडी से पूछा जाता है कि आपकी इकोनॉमिक कंडीशंस ठीक नहीं है, तो हम आपकी इकोनॉमिक कंडीशंस को ठीक करने के लिए आपको इस ट्रेड में डाल रहे हैं. तो आउट ऑफ कंपल्शन, बट स्टिल शी सेज, शी गिव्स हर कंसेंट. सो these can be two ways through which trafficking can happen. If you talk about child trafficking in India, there is Shakti Bahini. It's an NGO which works with regard to child trafficking. There are a lot of districts, like out of 593, 398, 378 districts have been affected by human trafficking, and different regions, different states all around India have been suffered. And child trafficking has become, even if we have strong laws, but still there have been cases of child trafficking. Now, if child trafficking not only means the selling, selling the organs of the children, they're also forced to beg, they're also forced to donate their organs. And there are times when the parents do not give the permission, but पेरेंट्स नहीं है तो फैमिली उनको चाइल्ड ट्रैफिकिंग में भेज देते हैं, एक्सेट्रा. एंड दिस इज अ विशियस सर्कल. ये इन ऑर्डर टू penetrate and break this circle, we need strong awareness, we need strong laws for it. And if you talk about causes of trafficking, you have economic and then cultural, religious, social factors, wherein the women and children are forced to do trafficking. And geopolitical factors, as in not only in India but different nations who are not being recognized as flourished nations. They trade with each other, like Bangladeshi. There are a lot of Bangladeshis ladies. They have been trafficked in India, in different regions, etc. Now, if I talk about the other kind of if I talk about trafficking, provision regarding trafficking internationally, you already have a trafficking you already have a convention which is also known as United Nations Conventions Against Transnational Organized Crime. Although we have national laws, we have international laws, but still laws will only be able to work if there is awareness among every individual. Not only every individual, every student for that matter. You all have joined higher studies, you've joined bachelor's or master's. सिर्फ लॉ या गवर्नमेंट का काम नहीं है, ये अवेयरनेस हर एक इंडिविजुअल के अंडर आती है. नाउ अपार्ट फ्रॉम दैट, इफ आई also talk about different one another kind of violence, which is sexual harassment. And if you talk about sexual harassment, there is no specific definition given under the law, but yes, it is an unwelcome sexual behavior or sexual innuendo that effect of offending, intimidating or humiliating a person in circumstances. It can be private, it can be public. It is not mandatory that it is private in nature, it can be public also. And not only now sexual harassment in workplace not only amounts to physical violence, it also can be sexual jokes or weird suggestions of whistling or eve teasing or persistent demand to participate in social activity related to the sexual orientation. Then you clearly make a comment, then you try to give good bad gestures, or even display of pornographic movies, etc., is a part of sexual harassment. Now offensive statements given to people inside, I mean private or telephonic conversation or email, anything can amount to sexual harassment. से जरूरी नहीं है सिर्फ ये है, but apart from asexual harassment can also be part of, I mean, it is not part of sexual harassment, but yes, it is an harassment done in workplace. Asexual harassment के क्या के examples होंगे, जैसे in workplace you give an extraordinary work and women are giving more work, men are not given work, so and you are told to, no, you're told to work overtime every day but not being paid. All of these are examples of harassment only. Now, if I clearly talk about impact of harassment on women, now every women specifically would have deep-rooted impact, especially after sexual harassment, throughout its life. It is kind of even if it is an emotional response or emotional harassment or a sexual harassment, it stays throughout. It actually affects the working of women, I mean, till the time she is able to remember things. Now, it's extraordinary, not been. I mean, it should not happen. And even verbal harassment like eve teasing and physical harassment like sexual harassment or any kind of harassment, both have an equal impact. It can you can't clearly say that verbal harassment do not have an impact. Yes, it does leave an impact, and especially it is a part of violence against women emotionally. And yes, everyone should understand that not only physical or sexual harassment is harassment, but also verbal and mental harassment is also part of harassment. Now, if you can see a lot of in the pie chart which I've seen, there are a lot of students who are subject to sexual harassment. There are staff who are subject to sexual harassment. There are professors who are subject to sexual harassment. And there are others who are also subject to sexual harassment. It is a bad business and it should not be. It is always better. A famous social activist have also clearly told that it is better to mend their ways individually rather than blaming the government with regard to harassment against women. Now, what can women students do? I mean, it's not only it should kept, I mean, not only, of course, women should be very adamant, but the awareness is the major thing. Women should be very strong enough to report these kind of harassments, even if it is at a slightest limit. Other people, men counterparts, should also help women to report and should work to help the women counterparts to report this particular violence in the surroundings. ये अवेयरनेस है जो हर इंडिविजुअल में होनी चाहिए, सिर्फ विमेन में नहीं, मेन फॉर दैट मैटर में भी अवेयरनेस होनी चाहिए. अगर मेन देख रहे हैं अपनी सोसाइटी में ऐसा होते हुए, एंड एवरी मेन शुड टेक अ स्टैंड टू रिपोर्ट दिस काइंड ऑफ हरासमेंट. Now, we already have, as I told you, we already have a law called Sexual Harassment at Workplace, which came into existence as state of Rajasthan. I think somebody is planning. Okay. विशाखा वर्सेस राजस्थान वेरी प्रोमिनेंट केस. आपने इस केस के बारे में, इवन इफ यू नॉट अ लॉ स्टूडेंट, बट ये एक ऐसा प्रोमिनेंट केस है जो हर इंसान को पता होना चाहिए. अगर आपको नहीं पता है तो प्लीज एटलीस्ट आपको आप उसके बारे में थोड़ा पढ़िए. बट विशाखा वर्सेस स्टेट ऑफ राजस्थान एक ऐसा केस है जो पूरे इंडिया को हिला दिया था, और इसी केस की वजह से गवर्नमेंट इतना एक्टिव हो गई थी. एंड जस्ट आफ्टर दिस केस द एक्ट केम इनटू एग्जिस्टिंग. द एक्ट का नाम है सेक्सुअल हरासमेंट एट वर्क प्लेस. अब एवरीबडी हु इज वर्किंग, एवरीवन हु इज वर्किंग इन अ कंपनी, they are been governed under sexual harassment at workplace, and even at a slightest point signs of harassment done towards women in the workplace is reported, you or you have a committee, you have a department of sexual harassment at workplace in every company, and companies are do recognizing and punishing the offenders, the people who are committing harassments, and the government is trying to support. Now, what can you do if you are the victim of sexual harassment? You can stop the harasser. You can speak out. You have to record the harassment so that you can leak out the bad. Okay. So please get a medical checkup done. You have to trust somebody confidently. You have to create a support group. You have to read. The only thing is you have to be courageous, and the other people should help and the women who are suffering from harassment. Now, if I talk about molestation, which is also another violence, which is against which, I think. Uh, Okay, so yes, I was talking about violence, molestation. Molestation is one kind of another violence which is also a violence against women. Now, molestation is you know, it can be, it is a general term used. Molestation is kind of a sexual exploitation of a child and a woman by an adult for sexual gratification of a profit. Now, it can be fondling, it can be mutual masturbation, it can be sodomy, it can be coitus. Now, molestation, not only molestation is a term which coincides with sexual harassment, which coincides with harassment for that matter, and even gestures, even forced activity which is done with regard to exploiting the other person would amount to molestation, and even eve teasing is a part of molestation. Now, then Union Women, Child and Development Ministry is also trying to make up guidelines to overcome molestation. And molestation majorly in there are a lot of people who pictures के नीचे गंदे गलत comment लिखते हैं. That is cyber. I mean, आजकल everybody is over social media and trying to defame everybody on the social media, trying to defame each other. That is also part of molestation. On that comes under a cyber crime. That is also kind of a molestation. Now, signs of molestation can be like, if you see, if there are physical signs that would be easily seen on the victim's body. There are behavioral signs when there is nothing on the body, but still there is a change in the behavior of the individual. So that is also part of molestation, because the victim is not only getting, even if it is, if she's not getting physical violence, but mental, it is at stake emotionally. Her lady who is being suffered from any kind of violence, वो कहीं ना कहीं emotional impact करता है. Now, you have violence against laws against molestation. molestation, like section 294 of IPC, section 509. You have 354. There are punishments also. Then section 323. All of IPC have a lot of provisions with regard to molestation. But even punishments come when somebody is doing that crime. तो वो क्राइम ना हो, उसका अवेयरनेस ज्यादा होना चाहिए more than the punishments. So there should be a common pursuance thought that every individual should work against, should work against these violence done to women at large. There are a lot of provisions like section 376, subsection B, 376C, 376D. Then everybody knows for a fact that there is a National Commission for Women. Now, National Commission of Women एक governmental organization है, उसका काम law बनाना नहीं होता. जसोला में उसका ऑफिस है, अगर आप उस ऑफिस में जाना चाहेंगे, of course, अगर कोई interested है women rights में, you can go to the office any time. National Commission of Women का काम है कि जो भी पूरे इंडिया में अगर कोई विमेन के अगेंस्ट एट्रोसिटी हो रही है तो वो रिपोर्टेड हो और विमेन को रिड्रेसल मिले, विमेन के अगेंस्ट कुछ ना हो. तो दैट इज काइंड ऑफ अ रिकमेंडेशन एंड वो इट इज काइंड ऑफ अ गवर्नमेंट ऑर्गेनाइजेशन जो हेल्प करता है विमेन को अगेंस्ट दीज एट्रोसिटीज. Now, if I talk about child molestation, molestation is, and the molestation, not only women molestation, child molestation, and now there are a lot of cases where men molestation also been reported. Now, there have been a lot of cases, there have been data accumulated by United Nations, but data the main thing which is important is हर इंसान में awareness होना चाहिए. Now, if you can see, if I give you one data of 2003, just one data of 2003, आप ग्राफ देख सकते हैं अपनी स्क्रीन में. molestation के केसेस देखिए, cruelty by husband and his relatives का डेटा का परसेंटेज देखिए, sexual harassment का डेटा देखिए, और ये 2003 का डेटा है. 2022 का डेटा also I will show in the subsequent slide. It has been so many years, but चीजें ठीक नहीं हुई हैं, और चीजें ठीक तभी होंगी जब अवेयरनेस होगा, जब हर इंडिविजुअल, हर स्टूडेंट ये समझेगा that everybody should help women or help anybody to eliminate any kind of violence at large. Now, you can also see data graphs on your screen, which is talking about different violence that is rape, dowry, death, molestation, sexual harassment, then cruelty by husband, then kidnapping, abduction, dowry prohibition act, etc. And the weird part is there are a lot of cases, because we have been practicing in courts. There have been cases where there are laws in India, laws हैं, but there are a lot of women who are taking advantage of these laws, because laws are thoda women inclined. Laws favor women, like sexual harassment and workplace, and that is specifically for women. But of course, you also have harassment against men, which is happening these days. Dowry Prohibition Act, yeah, Domestic Violence Act. Domestic Violence एक्ट. डोमेस्टिक वायलेंस का एक्ट में अगर आप पढ़ेंगे, लॉ पढ़ेंगे, तो वो सिर्फ विमेन के ऊपर बात करता है. बट आजकल डोमेस्टिक वायलेंस सिर्फ विमेन की नहीं होती, मेन की भी होती है, बट द परसेंटेज ऑफ मेन इज एक्स्ट्रॉर्डिनरी लेस वायलेंस अगेंस्ट मेन. The only thing is there should be awareness that violence होना ही नहीं चाहिए, women हो या men हो, because there have been a lot of cases reported against violence against women at large. So इसीलिए there have been laws, but the women should not break those laws, should not take advantage of those laws, and men should help women come out of such kind of violence. There should be no violence. That should be a prerogative of men also, not only women at large. Now, if I talk about one incident which talks, I need not talk about one incident. Every now and then आप रोज का न्यूज़पेपर खोलेंगे तो कुछ ना कुछ molestation, कुछ ना कुछ violence का केस आपको दिख ही जाएगा. case, if you talk about Patel's case, if you talk about Shakha's case, if you talk about Aftab's case, हर जगह why majorly 90% times women का molestation है, women के against violence क्यों होता है? Why not men? I mean, of course, men के against भी violence नहीं होना चाहिए, but why don't men recognize the fact that you should help women to come out of such violence? You should help the society at large so that these violence should not occur, and women, for that matter, should be strong enough to report such violence to the police, to the authorities. Now, if I clearly talk about, if I clearly talk about, there are a lot of NGOs who have been doing a very good role, who have been doing a very good role to protect women at large, but still. These NGOs, these contacts will only be able to protect, will not, I mean, will only be able to protect if the women is reporting the cases in the court or to the authorities. There have been a lot of cases which are not reported. If you talk about cases of rape in different states, in different these smaller states, they do not report the cases of a lot of molestation. Workplace may you know, there is discrimination of women and men. There discrimination of women and men, even if women have strong evidences to prove harassment against herself, there are a lot of people who help them demean it, who do not want them to go forward and report these cases to a higher level because of the power, because of the influence, etc. So this is how women should have an awareness that in the society, we should not leave this day of 25th November, which has been celebrated as Elimination of Violence Against Women. Why do we need to celebrate it? If the society is recognizing the fact that women is a human right, women की भी rights है, तो women के against violence हो रहा है, तो उसके लिए सिर्फ women तो खड़ा होना ही पड़ेगा. Women need to get strong. Why not other people should help get them strong? Right, there are a lot of NGOs and contacts which help them come up with a lot of like coordinators, Committee of Vulnerable Children, and Terrace Day Homes. This is an NGO which is related to child rights, and also with regard to this particular NGO, which is Terrace Day Homes. The work, there are a lot of they have accumulate. I mean, they protect a lot of women who have been suffered from heinous crimes. Eventually they help them reform as in, it's very difficult. अगर किसी lady के against violence होता है, तो it affects emotionally to a huge extent. So this kind of all of these kinds of NGOs is trying to reform that emotional abuse first. Although you can't forget the abuse thoroughly, but still there are people who are working in the organization with regard to decreasing the number of violence happening in India, these NGOs in India. And their method is not only retributive but reformative also. And they are also working to give jobs, and they were also working to give jobs and employment opportunities to the women who have been suffered, because if they are employed enough, they will be able to survive themselves. Now, Alochana is a very good NGO, Akshara is a very good NGO which is working with regard to protection of violence. Now, World Health Organization has clearly portrayed the fact that women and girls are most at risk of violence from men they know, particularly in the family. And this is a statement not by an individual, but this is a statement by the organization itself. And then the organization is coming up with a statement that clearly means the organization have collected data, survey. उनके पास data होता है, और data यही कहता है कि 90% maximum majority of women and girls violence has been reported from their respected family. The institution which has been recognized, which has been trusted to a huge extent, that kind of institution is only hampering their rights. कुछ and you have rape and sexual torture which are used as weapon of war. Now rape is treated as a revenge instrument against any women, because women maybe was not doing as per the whims and fancies of one particular individual, वो उसके मन का नहीं कर रहा था, aggravated of the fact he committed rape over that lady. बहुत केसेस आपने भी सुने हैं, बहुत केसेस न्यूज़पेपर में रिपोर्ट एवरीडे बेसिस पे होते हैं. बट व्हाई डू ऑल ऑफ दीज केसेस आर रिपोर्टेड? बिकॉज in spite of having laws, in spite of continuous awareness, continuous talking about the same issues, but still these violence they're not put to an end. That means we need strong society who could report these cases. We need strong people in the society जो ये problems को recognize करे. Then violence against women has serious mental, physical, sexual health consequences, which I already clearly quoted. Violence against women is big problem and it can be prevented. You can't say that it cannot be prevented. It can be prevented only when the whole universe unites together. The whole universe understand the fact that violence have been occurring. पूरे वर्ल्ड में वायलेंस हो रही है, इंडिविजुअली रिकग्नाइज कर रहे हैं कि अगर वायलेंस हो रही है तो उसको रिपोर्ट भी करना चाहिए. अगर वायलेंस हो रही है, देयर शुड बी पीपल हु आर एक्चुअली वर्किंग टू पनिश द ऑफेंडर्स. इट इज अ रॉन्ग डन टू द सोसाइटी. और अगर एक रॉन्ग है तो व्हाई नॉट द होल वर्ल्ड should work to remove that wrong from the society. That's what I would always suggest, and clearly quoted, you should stop violence against women. Violence of women should not only be stopped by women, but also people at large. Now, I would conclude in simpler word that this kind of crime or crime done to the people, to the women at large, if women of course is a human being. Now human being also recognized under human rights declaration as human rights. I mean, women have been recognized as human, so they also get human rights as per United Nations declarations. When United Nations as a huge entity, as an international body, is recognizing and playing and doing a small steady role to decrease the violence cases, why not every individual is aware enough to report against this particular violence? Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for today's session. और ये जो बातें हैं ये बच्चों के सामने एक दो बार हम लोग ऑफलाइन में भी सेशन.
हाँ, ये बहुत जरूरी है सर.
क्वेश्चंस होते हैं छोटे छोटे ऐसे जो करना है या इनको अवेयर होना चाहिए. ये अवेयर सेशन का जो इम्पोर्टेंस है वो बहुत ही है जरूरी है सभी बच्चों के लिए, बॉयज और गर्ल्स सभी के लिए है इम्पोर्टेंट ये.
जी सर.
तो ऐसे हम लोग फर्दर फिर से ऑर्गेनाइज करेंगे और हुए होंगे. अगर किसी स्टूडेंट का अगर कोई क्वेश्चन हो तो अनम्यूट करके क्वेश्चन पूछ सकते हैं, एंड यूट्यूब पर आप उसके क्वेश्चन भी लिख सकते हैं. So thank you, Tanvi ma'am, for today's session. And
thank you so much. Thank you for having me. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
मेरे को ही फोन किया था वो